The systematic collection of data on student perceptions and behaviors is paramount to effective instructional design and continuous quality improvement in education. Well-designed learning surveys and observation tools transition assessment from mere compliance to genuine inquiry, providing actionable insights into student motivation, self-efficacy, contextual factors, and the fidelity of pedagogical execution. As practitioners and linguists, we must ensure these instruments are not only psychometrically sound, but also culturally and linguistically appropriate, capturing authentic American English experiences and nuances. Part 1. Foundational Principles of Instrument Design. The design process must be anchored in the learning goals and research questions. Before drafting a single item, designers must establish the construct, the specific concept or skill to be measured. For instance, in a second language acquisition (SLA) context, the construct might be communicative competence in academic settings, which is distinct from grammatical accuracy. 1. Alignment with learning objectives (LOs). Every item in a survey or observation checklist must map directly back to a defined learning outcome or a critical factor influencing that outcome, such as student-teacher rapport. Misalignment results in garbage in, garbage out, yielding data that cannot accurately inform instructional adjustments. This alignment is particularly crucial in domains like language learning, where outcomes are complex, encompassing affect, cognition, and performance. 2. Validity and reliability. Central to effective design are the concepts of validity and reliability. Reliability ensures the consistency of the instrument, meaning it would produce similar results under similar conditions. Validity, conversely, is about accuracy. It confirms that the tool actually measures the construct it intends to measure. Specifically, content validity ensures the instrument comprehensively covers all relevant aspects of the target construct. For instance, a survey on student engagement should include cognitive, emotional, and behavioral dimensions to be thorough. Construct validity goes deeper, confirming the instrument measures the underlying theoretical construct it purports to measure, a concept often verified through post-collection statistical analysis. Finally, for observation tools, inter-rater reliability is critically important, ensuring that two independent observers, using the same set of criteria, arrive at the same conclusion or rating when watching the identical event. Art 2. Designing effective learning surveys. Learning surveys are essential for capturing affective and perceptual data, the why and how students experience learning, which behavioral observation alone cannot reveal. These tools are often quantitative, employing scales, but should always integrate qualitative elements for depth. 1. Defining scope and measurement targets. When defining the scope of a survey, several key measurement targets are commonly addressed, often falling into 4 domains. The affective domain focuses on constructs like student motivation, anxiety, self-efficacy, and interest, answering the pedagogical question, how confident or motivated are students regarding the material? The cognitive domain investigates perceived learning, study habits, and metacognition, addressing how students approach problem-solving or knowledge consolidation. The environmental domain assesses external factors, such as teacher feedback quality, peer collaboration, and resource access, to determine if students feel the classroom environment supports their success. Lastly, the process domain evaluates the mechanics of instruction, including instructional clarity, pace, and the relevance of tasks, asking whether students perceive the instruction as clear, equitable, and relevant to their learning journey. A survey should be tightly focused on these domains to maximize response rates and data quality. 2. Survey item crafting, the linguistic imperative. Survey item crafting is bound by a crucial linguistic imperative, as wording profoundly influences interpretation and response. To this end, items must prioritize clarity and simplicity, strictly avoiding academic jargon, technical terminology, complex syntax, double negatives, or lengthy subordinate clauses. The language must reflect authentic American English usage, appropriate for the respondent's educational level. Furthermore, unidimensionality, or using single-barreled items, is mandatory. Each statement must address only one concept, For instance, combining the teacher provides clear instructions and helpful feedback into one item is problematic, as a student might agree with one part but not the other. It is also vital to practice avoiding leading questions by ensuring all items remain neutral. Instead of asking if students agree the highly effective instructor made the material easy, a neutral phrasing like "the instructor explained concepts clearly" is preferred. Finally, scale selection, often referred to as the Likert challenge, requires consistency. Designers must use a consistent scale, e.g., 5-point or 7-point, that is clearly labeled, e.g., strongly disagree to strongly agree. A critical decision is whether to use an odd number of options, which provides a neutral midpoint, or an even number, which forces the respondent to lean either positive or negative. For surveys dealing with sensitive topics, a neutral midpoint is often beneficial. 3. Integrating qualitative data. High-quality surveys reserve space for open-ended questions. These qualitative responses provide rich, contextual data that can illuminate the quantitative findings. Prompting authenticity is key, meaning prompts should be framed invitingly, such as, "What is one specific change that would improve your learning experience?" Or, "Please explain the reasoning behind your rating on question X." This approach allows students to use their own language and express complex experiences that a purely quantitative scale cannot capture. Part 3. Designing observation tools. Observation tools capture behavioral evidence in real time, providing an objective snapshot of practice, teaching fidelity, and engagement, student response. They require intense focus on definition and standardization. 1. Defining observable behaviors. Unlike surveys, which measure perceptions, observation tools measure actions. The targeted construct must be broken down into discrete, measurable, and observable behaviors. To measure a construct like teacher feedback, an observer doesn't simply rate, provides effective feedback, but tracks specific actions. This might involve using a checklist to note the presence or absence of specific actions, such as whether the teacher provided written comments on task structure. Alternatively, a frequency count could tally how many times the teacher used positive reinforcement during a 10-minute period. Finally, a rating scale could be employed to assess the extent to which the feedback was timely, specific, and actionable. 2. Types of observation instruments. Observation instruments primarily fall into 3 categories. Checklists and frequency counts represent the simplest tools, boasting the highest reliability, where the observer merely notes the presence or absence of a behavior or tallies its occurrence over a set time. In a linguistic context, this approach is useful for tracking the type and frequency of linguistic errors a teacher explicitly corrects, such as grammar, pronunciation, or vocabulary. Moving beyond simple presence, rating scales and rubrics require the observer to make a qualitative judgment concerning the quality, intensity, or extent of a behavior. To ensure high inter-rater reliability with these tools, the rubric anchors, the descriptive text for each scale point, must be meticulously crafted and unambiguously distinct. For example, if a rating scale uses a 1 to 4 range for student engagement, the description for a 4 highly engaged must clearly state that the student actively contributes, volunteers answers, and seeks clarification, while 1 minimally engaged indicates the student is passive and only responds when directly called upon. The final instrument type is anecdotal records, which capture significant, non-quantifiable events and verbatim quotes, while time-intensive. These narrative records are invaluable for contextualizing quantitative findings and identifying unexpected challenges or successes. The best practice here is to limit the narrative section to a specific time frame and ensure it focuses solely on contextualizing the numerical data collected elsewhere on the tool. 3. Observer training and standardization. Observation is highly susceptible to bias, such as the halo effect, where a general impression skews specific ratings. Therefore, mitigation through intensive training is essential. This training must include calibration sessions, where observers watch the same standardized, pre-rated video clips and score them independently. They then compare scores and discuss discrepancies until a high level of inter-rater agreement. Typically, 80% or higher is achieved. Crucially, the tool's design and training must emphasize minimizing inference, forcing the observer to focus on description, what was done or said, rather than inference, why it was done or said. For instance, a reliable observer records, "The teacher waited for 15 seconds after asking a question," rather than offering the judgmental interpretation, "The teacher was patient." Part 4. Data integration, ethics, and continuous improvement. Designing instruments is only the first step. Successful application requires a plan for analysis and ethical safeguarding. 1. Data triangulation and synthesis. The true power of these instruments is realized when data from surveys, perceptions, and observation tools, behavior, are combined. This process is called triangulation. Consider a scenario where a student survey indicates low motivation, perception, yet the observation tool shows high student talk time and high on-task behavior. The triangulation suggests that while the instructional activities are engaging, the students might not see the value of the final outcome or the overall utility of the course. The solution in this case points toward motivational framing rather than task redesign. 2. Ethical considerations and privacy. All instrument design must strictly adhere to ethical guidelines, especially concerning data privacy. This begins with informed consent. Students and teachers must be fully informed about the data collection's purpose, how the data will be utilized, e.g., developmental versus evaluative, and how anonymity will be maintained. A necessary distinction must be drawn between anonymity and confidentiality. Surveys are typically anonymous, meaning the identity is unknown. Observation tools, however, often require identifying the observed party, teacher, student group, meaning the data is held confidential and accessible only to necessary personnel, such as immediate supervisors or researchers. Finally, data security is paramount. All collected data must be stored securely and destroyed after its period of retention has expired. 3. Pilot testing and revision. The design process culminates in pilot testing and revision, as no instrument is perfect on the first draft. For surveys, this involves cognitive interviewing, where a small sample of respondents is asked to think aloud as they answer. This vital linguistic check reveals ambiguities in wording, confirming whether respondents interpret the question exactly as the designer intended. For observation tools, field testing requires trained observers to use the tool in a live classroom setting. This helps identify issues with the tool's flow, reveal timing constraints, or pinpoint poorly defined rubric anchors. This iterative process of testing and refinement is the final, non-negotiable step required to ensure the instrument achieves high reliability before its widespread deployment. Designing learning surveys and observation tools is an intricate process that demands both pedagogical expertise and linguistic precision. The goal is to build instruments that are valid, reliable, and deeply aligned with the learning context. By prioritizing clear construct definition, ensuring linguistic clarity for the target population, meticulously training observers, and committing to ethical data practices, we can transform assessment into a powerful engine for teaching excellence and learner success. The resulting data will move beyond simple metrics to provide a coherent, multifaceted narrative of the educational experience.